The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
After he had fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, so the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, he came forward toward them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once Jesus spoke to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat, began to walk on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter. And he said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
Kyrie sosan me. Kyrie sosan me. Kyrie sosan me. It's the Greek in which the Gospel today is originally written. Kyrie sosan me. It is what Peter says to Jesus, "Lord, save me. Save me." Peter is drowning, and he knows it. He's a fisherman, and he knows when he is in trouble. "Lord, save me." Beginning of the episode, we hear about Jesus going up to the mountain to pray, and then the disciples head out into the boat to go home, going across the Sea of Galilee. And somewhere in the middle of the night, they encounter a storm that's throwing them about in their little boat, winds blowing. And in the darkness, they see a figure of someone walking on the water. That's pretty scary. They've probably never seen that before, walking on the water. They say it is a phantasma. Phantasma. In English, we translate in the Gospel as ghost, but in the Greek it means phantom. It's much more mysterious. Ghost. We think of Casper the Friendly Ghost. This is no friendly ghost. This is a phantom. The belief was that the evil spirits drove the storm. And the belief of the disciples as they see this phantom coming towards them is that the phantom is coming to kill them in the storm. Phantasma. But Jesus calls out to them. It's not a phantom, it's Jesus walking along on the water. What's he doing out there? Why is Jesus walking on the water? I don't know. Maybe he wanted a short way home. It's hard to say. Maybe he wanted to get there first. He didn't want to take the road that you can take even today and go around the Sea of Galilee and get to Capernaum. He decides he's going to take a shortcut. Okay, in the middle of the storm, let's walk on the water. This is so much fun. And so Jesus is heading out. Whether he meant to run into them or not, I don't know. It's not, the Gospel doesn't say. But he comes upon them, and they are so afraid. But he says, "It's me." You'll say in the Greek something he says many times in the Gospel, "Ego eimi." Ego eimi, it's me, it's myself. Don't be afraid, it's me. It's me. And Peter hears that, and for some reason it causes him to be adventuresome. Okay, he says, okay, if it's really you, you're not the phantom coming to kill us, invite me to come out on the water with you. Peter's a fisherman. He knows this is crazy. But Jesus says, sure, come. So Peter climbs out of the boat, stands on the water. That must have been an interesting experience for him, and begins walking. And he gets part of the way to Jesus, and the wind's blowing, and the waves are crashing. And all of a sudden, he sort of comes to himself, probably says to himself, what am I doing? Am I an idiot? Why am I out here? And he becomes afraid, and he begins to sink. He's going to drown, and he knows it. And so he says to Jesus, Lord, save me, otherwise I'm lost. And so Jesus reaches down and takes hold of him and pulls him up. Now, in my imagination, I'm thinking that Jesus is not holding his hand. He's doing what is depicted in our icon of the resurrection, in which Jesus is shown as entering the place of the dead, coming for Adam and Eve. They will not be left behind. And in the icon, he's reaching down. If you notice, he's not holding them by the hand. He's holding them by the wrist. He is doing everything. They are doing nothing. They're not even holding on. He takes hold of them and pulls them to salvation. And in my imagination, that's what I see him doing with Peter. Reaches down, not to shake hands with him, hold him by the wrist, totally in control, and pulls him up. And then they head to the boat. I don't know, is Peter walking on the water again, or is Jesus just sort of dragging him along through the water? Don't know. Gospel doesn't say, but they finally get to the boat. And Jesus says, not only to Peter, but to everyone, gospel, it's Greek for why, etistasis, etistasis, why did you doubt? Why? Why did you doubt? Why? Etistasis can also mean hesitate. Why did you hesitate? But the root meaning of etistasis in Greek means to stand in two minds. That's what it means. Stand in two minds. You can't make up your mind. So you got your feet in both places, and you're just not making a decision. Jesus says, why are you doing that? Make a decision. He's calling them to be his disciples and teaching us through the gospel to be disciples of his. Jesus is not the storm. Jesus is simply walking through the storm, but he's a figure of peace and love and salvation. And he reaches down calmly and lifts Peter out of the water and brings him back to life, and brings him to the boat, to their community. But Jesus is peaceful. He's quiet and reassuring. We hear about God in the first reading in first book of Kings, in which Elijah is in a cave and he's been told that you are about to encounter God. So get ready. You're about to encounter God. Okay, so he goes to the opening of the cave, and now he's going to wait. Well, at some point, a huge windstorm comes up. Huge wind. This wind is so strong, it's breaking the rocks. That's strong wind. I've seen the wind blow rocks along the ground. I've never seen them break them. But they're breaking rocks. That's how strong it is. And then the wind's passed. No God. No God there. So Elijah waits. And then there's an earthquake. Mountain shaking. Everything's going around. Big, strong earthquake. And then it stops. Elijah's standing there. No God. And so then there's a huge fire. Unfortunately, we're really familiar with fires these days. This is a big raging fire. Comes raging across the top of that mountain with Elijah standing in the opening of the cave. The huge fire goes by. No God. No God. Elijah is still standing there. He says, well, I'm waiting here. But what we hear in the passage is that after the fire, Elijah experiences a tiny whispering sound. A tiny whispering sound. You almost would miss it. It is so tiny. A tiny whispering sound. It's God. God came. But God for Elijah is like as if someone came up to him and lightly kissed him on the cheek. A tiny whispering sound. So subtle, so quiet, so easy to discount. We so want God to be entertaining. We want fire and brimstone. We want earthquakes and fire and big wind and all this drama, but that's not how God is. That's what Elijah found out. God is a tiny whispering sound. And it's something that would be so easy to overlook. Paul would be so impressed with his experience with the Lord, that tiny whispering sound, that in the second reading today in his letter to the Romans, he's saying that is so important. That tiny experience, that experience of God so quiet, just out of sight. I would give my life for my people, the Israelites, to believe in Jesus. Israelites had everything they needed. They had the law, they had the prophets, they were saved, they were brought into the promised land. And Paul's saying, I would do anything for them to believe. In fact, you know what I would do? I would give up my belief in Christ. I would give up my own salvation so that they can live. That sounds familiar. It's what Jesus does on the cross. He dies so we can live. And that's what Paul is copying. He's following that model of Jesus, that in order to save his people, the Israelites, they were also Jesus' people, to save his people, he would not only give up his life, but give up his relationship with Christ. He doesn't, but that's his wish. That's how intense he is. So even though Jesus in his life is so quiet, he's willing to go to those lengths in order to convince his people to follow Jesus. And so we too can experience Jesus in a very quiet way. We too may not get any flashes of fire or something dramatic, big loud noise, something you can't avoid. One might say that Christ often comes in ways that underwhelm us. Jesus is underwhelming, not overwhelming, underwhelming. He is so subtle. He is so quiet. It would be so easy to miss him. But he's there. He's there helping us and saving us, just as he reached down into the water and grabbed Peter and pulled him up to life. So that's what Jesus does with us each day. But it's easy to miss it if they're not listening, paying attention. It's quiet. It's a whispering sound. And it's so easy to overlook it. So in these quiet days of summer, it's time for us maybe to spend some time paying attention to the quiet presence of God. There's all this noise in the world. It's so loud. And actually, the presence of the divine creator, you can hardly hear it. And it's so subtle. And so we're called to be attentive to that little whispering sound, that little voice that comes up to us, and the Lord kisses us on the cheek.